Every spring, millions of gardeners walk into garden centers and walk out with plants that have an expiration date. Beautiful, yes, but temporary. Built to bloom once and die. And every following April, those same gardeners are back spending the same money, buying the same flowers, repeating the same cycle without ever questioning it. There is a smarter way to garden, and it starts with one simple shift. Stop buying annuals and start planting perennials. These are plants that establish their roots in your soil, survive your winters, and return each spring with more vigor than the year before. You invest once, they pay you back for decades. Some of the plants I am going to talk about today will still be flowering in your garden long after you have forgotten what you paid for them. There are 9 of them, and by the time we are done, you will know exactly which ones belong in your garden, exactly how to grow them, and exactly what mistakes to avoid. The first one is Black-Eyed Susan, and if you have never grown it, you are about to wonder why you waited so long. Picture a flower that opens in June and does not stop until October. 4 months of golden yellow blooms with a dark chocolate center, standing 2 to 3 feet tall, swaying in the summer heat while everything around it struggles. That is Black-Eyed Susan. It does not need rich soil. It does not need constant watering. It does not need your attention to perform. Give it 6 hours of sun and a patch of ground, any ground, and it will reward you with more color than most plants manage in their entire lifespan. It spreads on its own each year, quietly dropping seeds into the surrounding soil and filling in bare spaces without any help from you. The birds figure this out too. Goldfinches and sparrows work those seed heads through the dead of winter, treating them like a fully stocked pantry when everything else is shut down. One thing most gardeners get wrong: they cut every spent flower off the moment it fades. Do not do that. Deadhead selectively to keep new blooms coming, but leave most of the seed heads standing. Those are not dead flowers. Those are next year's plants and this winter's bird food. It grows in zones 3 through 9. It handles poor soil, clay, sand, drought, pH of 6 to 7. There is almost no yard in America where this plant will not thrive. The second plant is perennial salvia. And before you say you have grown salvia before, make sure you are thinking of the right one. The salvia sold at most garden centers as a bedding plant is an annual, a completely different plant. The perennial salvia blooms in late spring, gets cut back hard, blooms again in midsummer, gets cut back again, and often produces a third flush of flowers heading into fall. 3 rounds of bloom from a single plant in a single season, and then it comes back the following year and does it all over again. The flowers are deep violet, rich, jewel-toned purple that holds its color in full sun without fading. It grows 18 to 24 inches tall and forms a tight, tidy mound that fits naturally into the front or middle of any border. It is also one of the most reliably deer-resistant perennials you can grow. The same aromatic oils that make it smell pleasant to you make it completely unappetizing to deer. If you garden in an area with deer pressure, and across much of the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and Midwest you almost certainly do, salvia gives you full-season color without the risk of waking up to find it eaten down to the ground overnight. Zones 4 through 8. Full sun, well-drained soil, drought-tolerant once established, pH 5.5 to 7. The key to getting 3 bloom cycles out of this plant is the cutback. When each flush of flowers fades, cut the whole plant down to 4 to 6 inches. It looks drastic. Do it anyway. New growth emerges within weeks and the next flush follows shortly after. The third plant has been growing in North America for thousands of years before anyone thought to put it in a garden. Native communities harvested it for medicine. Pollinators depend on it. Birds return to it through the coldest months of winter, and it will grow in soil so poor that most other flowering plants would simply give up. That plant is coneflower. The flowers are distinctive, swept-back petals radiating outward from a raised, domed center that deepens from green to bronze as the season progresses. The original variety is purple, but modern breeding has expanded the palette dramatically. Orange, red, yellow, white, pink, magenta, almost every color is now available, and every single one carries that same bold central cone that gives the plant its unmistakable character. It blooms July through October. It grows 2 to 5 feet tall depending on the variety. It tolerates clay, sand, and poor soil. It handles drought once established. Zones 3 through 9, virtually every gardener in the continental United States is in range. When the petals drop in fall, do not clean up the seed heads. Leave every single one standing. Goldfinches, the brilliant yellow birds that seem to vanish from yards by late summer, come back specifically for coneflower seed heads and work them straight through winter. And those standing stems protect the crown of the plant from the freeze-thaw cycles that do far more winter damage to perennials than cold temperatures alone. Cut coneflowers back in late February or early March, not in fall. The difference in plant health and wildlife value between those two approaches is significant. The fourth plant is the daylily, and the most remarkable thing about it is how little it asks of you. Drive through any rural area and you will see daylilies growing on roadsides, around abandoned foundations, along fence lines where nobody has tended them in years. No water, no fertilizer, no care of any kind, and they bloom every summer without fail, as reliable as the season itself. The flowers are trumpet-shaped and come in almost every color you can imagine: orange, yellow, red, pink, burgundy, lavender, cream, and an enormous range of bicolors. Each individual flower opens for exactly 1 day. But each stem holds multiple buds that open in sequence, so a single clump stays in bloom for weeks rather than days, the display rolling forward continuously instead of peaking and collapsing all at once. Zones 3 through 10, the widest hardiness range of any plant on this list. Full sun to partial shade. Soil pH 6 to 6.5, 1 to 4 feet tall depending on variety. Here is the economic case for daylilies. One plant, purchased for somewhere between $8 and $15, will double in size every 2 to 3 years. Within 5 years, that original clump can be divided into 8 to 12 individual plants. Each of those can be replanted or given away. The initial cost essentially disappears over time as the plant multiplies itself at no expense to you. Division is also what keeps daylilies blooming at their best. Every 3 to 5 years, when the center of a clump starts producing fewer flowers while the outer edges stay vigorous, that is the signal to dig it up, split it into sections of 3 to 5 fans, and replant. Skip that step and flower production gradually declines. Stay on top of it and the plant performs at full strength indefinitely. Do not cut the foliage back after blooming ends. Those leaves are still working, photosynthesizing, pushing energy back into the root system, building the reserves that power next year's flowers. Wait for the first hard frost, then cut back. Not before. The fifth plant stops people in their tracks. Not because of how it looks, but because of how it smells. Garden phlox produces a fragrance that carries across an entire yard on a warm summer evening. Rich, sweet, unmistakably floral. The kind of scent that makes people stop walking and look around trying to identify the source. The flowers themselves are equally impressive. Large, rounded clusters 6 to 8 inches across, sitting on top of stems 3 to 4 feet tall, in shades of deep pink, white, lavender, red, and bicolors with contrasting centers. It blooms July through September. It needs full sun, more than 6 hours is better, and consistently moist, well-drained, fertile soil. Zones 4 through 8, pH 6 to 7. Hummingbirds find garden phlox irresistible. The tubular shape and the color range, especially the pinks and reds, are exactly what they are built to feed from. A well-established planting in full bloom is more reliable than any feeder because the flowers are always available and always fresh. The one care practice that makes the biggest difference with this plant is aggressive thinning in spring. When new stems emerge from the base, cut them back to 5 or 6 of the strongest. Remove everything else. More stems sounds like more flowers, but what it actually produces is overcrowding, poor airflow, and powdery mildew, which is the most common and most disfiguring problem with garden phlox. 5 strong stems with space between them produce better flowers, healthier plants, and a longer bloom season than a dense cluster of weak ones ever will. The sixth plant is Russian sage, and this is the one that tends to change how people think about garden design. It grows 3 to 5 feet tall and produces airy branching stems covered in tiny lavender blue flowers from midsummer through the first hard frost. The overall effect is less like a solid block of color and more like a luminous haze, silvery, almost translucent, moving constantly in the breeze and catching afternoon light in a way that makes it look like it is generating its own glow. It blooms longer than almost any other perennial available, July through October, sometimes into November, and it does it in conditions that eliminate most other plants from consideration: sustained summer heat, extended drought, alkaline soils that make growing flowering perennials difficult across large parts of the West and Midwest. Russian sage handles all of it: full sun, poor to average well-drained soil, pH 6 to 8, zones 4 through 9. Extremely drought-tolerant once established. Here is the thing that most people get wrong. They plant Russian sage in a well-prepared garden bed, good soil amended with compost, properly fertilized, and then wonder why it looks weak and floppy instead of the tall, upright specimen they expected. Rich soil is the problem. Russian sage responds to fertile ground by producing soft, heavy growth that cannot hold itself up. Put it in your leanest, most neglected soil, the spot where nothing else will grow, and it will stand tall and bloom magnificently. The worse the soil, the better the plant performs. The seventh plant solves a problem that frustrates nearly every gardener eventually: the shaded corner, the area under a large tree, the north-facing side of the house that never sees direct sun. Places where most flowering perennials simply will not grow. Bleeding heart grows there, and it is one of the most visually unusual plants in the perennial world. The flowers hang from arching, gently weeping stems in the shape of perfect little hearts, deep rose pink with a small white teardrop petal suspended below each one. The stems curve outward as the plant matures, giving it a soft, graceful habit unlike anything else in the spring garden. It blooms in April and May, arriving before most other perennials have fully emerged, filling the shaded garden with color when it needs it most, partial to full shade. Moist, humus-rich, well-drained soil, pH 6 to 7, consistent moisture through spring, zones 3 through 9, in warmer zones, 6 through 9, bleeding heart goes dormant in summer. The foliage yellows, fades, and disappears completely by July. Every gardener who encounters this for the first time assumes the plant has died and digs it up. That is a mistake. The roots are alive underground, resting exactly as they are designed to do. The plant will return the following April without any intervention. The solution is to plant companions alongside it: hostas, ferns, astilbe, whose foliage expands through early summer and fills the space bleeding heart leaves behind. Once planted, leave bleeding heart where it is. It builds a specific relationship with the soil around its roots and resents being moved. Choose the right spot before you plant. Then let it be. The eighth plant is catmint, and the first thing to know is that it is not catnip. They are related, but catmint does not contain the compound that affects cats. What it does contain is an extraordinary ability to attract bees. When catmint is in full bloom, the pollinator activity around it is dense enough to be genuinely startling, and that activity does not stay contained to the plant itself. It spreads through your entire garden, increasing pollination across every flowering plant growing nearby. If you grow vegetables anywhere close to your ornamental beds, catmint makes them more productive. The plant itself is soft and billowing. Lavender blue flower spikes above mounding gray-green foliage, 12 to 24 inches tall, moving gently with any breeze. It works with virtually every other plant color in the garden and looks good even when it is not in bloom. Full sun to light shade. Well-drained soil. This is non-negotiable. pH 6 to 8, zones 3 through 8, genuinely drought-tolerant once established. The technique that unlocks catmint's full potential is hard cutback after each bloom flush. When the first flowers fade in June, cut the whole plant back to 4 inches. Not a trim, a hard cutback. New growth emerges within 2 weeks. A full second bloom follows within 5 or 6 weeks. Do it again and you often get a third flush in early fall. 3 complete bloom cycles from late spring through September. Skip the cutback because it looks too severe and you get one gradually weakening flush that fades into straggly growth by midsummer. The choice is yours, but now you know what it costs you. The ninth plant is the one most American home gardeners have never heard of. Professional designers use it, botanical gardens feature it prominently, horticulturalists consider it one of the finest perennials available. And it is almost entirely absent from the average home garden. That plant is Baptisia. In May and June, Baptisia sends up tall, upright flower spikes in a shade of deep indigo blue that is genuinely rare in the perennial world. True blue flowers are uncommon. This is one of the best sources of that color available to American gardeners. The individual flowers are pea-shaped, arranged along vertical stems in a way that resembles lupine, but Baptisia is significantly tougher, longer-lived, and more adaptable across a wider range of American climates. After the flowers fade, dense blue-green foliage fills out the plant through the rest of the growing season, suppressing weeds and holding its attractive appearance without any attention. And when fall arrives, the seed pods that develop are something else entirely: inflated, charcoal black, architectural in shape, rattling in the wind like a natural percussion instrument, and providing genuine ornamental interest through winter. 3 to 4 feet tall, spreading to equal width at maturity, full sun to light shade, average to poor, well-drained soil, pH 5.5 to 7, zones 3 through 9, drought-tolerant once established. Baptisia is also a nitrogen fixer. Like legumes in the vegetable garden, it works with soil bacteria to pull nitrogen from the air and deposit it in the surrounding soil. Planting Baptisia does not just add a beautiful plant to your garden, it gradually improves the soil for everything growing around it. There is one thing you need to know before you plant it. Baptisia takes 3 years to reach its full flowering potential. The first year it establishes its root system. The second year it grows larger but still holds back. The third year it flowers fully, and when it does, the display makes the wait feel completely worthwhile. The critical mistake people make is losing patience in year 2, digging the plant up and concluding that it does not work. Leave it alone, do not divide it, do not move it, give it 3 uninterrupted years in the same spot and it will reward you with flowers every spring for the next several decades. There are Baptisia plants in American gardens that are 40 years old, still blooming reliably, never having been replaced. Now, you can choose all 9 of these plants perfectly, match every one to the right zone, the right light, the right spacing, and still get disappointing results if you get this next part wrong. Soil preparation is what separates a garden that performs from one that frustrates. It is not glamorous. Nobody makes viral content about amending soil. But every experienced gardener will tell you it is the decision that matters most. Before planting any perennial, work the soil to a depth of 12 inches. Not 6, 12. Perennial roots go deep, and they need unobstructed soil to do it. Roots that hit compaction at 6 inches stop going down and start circling. Circling roots produce weak, drought-vulnerable plants. Deep, loose soil produces the extensive root systems that make perennials genuinely tough. Add 3 to 4 inches of quality compost worked into the top 8 inches of that loosened soil. In clay, compost opens up the structure and improves drainage. In sand, it builds water retention. In average soil, it feeds the biology that feeds your plants all season long. Dig planting holes twice as wide as the root ball and slightly shallower than its depth. The crown of the plant, the point where stems meet roots, needs to sit at or just above the surrounding soil surface. Crown rot begins when that point is buried too deep. When in doubt, plant a touch high. Before the plant goes in, take 60 seconds to loosen and spread the root ball with your fingers, especially if roots have been circling the container. That 60 seconds determines how fast and how thoroughly the plant establishes. Water deeply immediately after planting. A slow, thorough soak, not a surface spray. Keep watering once weekly for the first 4 to 6 weeks. After that, shift to deep, infrequent watering. Every 10 to 14 days, slow enough to penetrate 8 to 10 inches. This trains roots downward toward reliable moisture rather than keeping them shallow and vulnerable. Mulch 2 to 3 inches deep around every plant. Keep it away from the crown. Leave 2 inches of bare soil around the base of each plant. Mulch against the stem creates moisture and rot conditions that kill more perennials than any pest or disease. Spring care is straightforward. Cut back winter stems to 2 or 3 inches once you see new growth emerging from the base. Divide overcrowded clumps of daylilies, coneflowers, catmint, black-eyed Susans, and garden phlox if the center of the clump looked thin last season. Spread a 1-inch layer of compost around every plant, no synthetic fertilizer which pushes foliage at the expense of flowers. And leave Baptisia, Russian sage, and bleeding heart completely alone. Through summer, deadhead coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, salvia, and catmint to extend bloom. Cut catmint and salvia back hard after each flush. This is what gives you the multiple bloom cycles. Water at the base of plants rather than overhead, especially for garden phlox. In fall, leave coneflower and black-eyed Susan seed heads standing for the birds. Cut back phlox, daylilies, and bleeding heart after the first hard frost. Add mulch over crowns in zones 4 and 5 before the ground freezes. Do not fertilize. In winter, let the seed heads and stems stand as long as birds are working them. Use the quiet months to plan what you want to add or change. Order from mail-order nurseries in January and February. The selection is far wider than local garden centers carry, and the best varieties disappear early. The mistake that produces disappointing perennial gardens is almost never the wrong plant in the wrong zone. It is choosing plants based on what is blooming at the nursery on the day you visit, and ending up with a garden that peaks for 3 weeks and then has almost nothing to show for the next 5 months. The solution is to plan for bloom across the entire season rather than choosing what looks good today. Bleeding heart and Baptisia open in April and May, covering the gap between spring bulbs and the main perennial season. Salvia and catmint follow in late May and June, carrying the garden into early summer. Coneflower, black-eyed Susan, daylily, and garden phlox take over through July and August, the high season, the garden at full volume. Russian sage carries the late season from August through October, providing color and movement when most other perennials have finished. Plant in groups of 3 or 5 rather than single specimens. Grouped plantings read as intentional drifts rather than scattered dots. Short plants at the front, medium in the middle, tall at the back. Repeat plants throughout the bed in multiple locations rather than massing them all in one spot. Repetition is what gives a garden visual rhythm and a sense of design. If you are new to perennials and want to start somewhere that gives you fast results and forgives mistakes, plant black-eyed Susan and daylily. Both will grow in poor soil. Both handle neglect and drought once they find their footing. Both expand on their own over time. Both will make your garden look genuinely alive in their very first season. If you have gardened for years and want to add plants that change the fundamental character of a space, plant Baptisia and Russian sage. Give Baptisia 3 undisturbed years, put Russian sage in the worst soil you have and do not improve it. Both will give you a presence and permanence that no annual and no short-lived perennial can match. And if you want the full picture, a garden with color and wildlife value from April through October, getting richer and more beautiful every single year without constant replanting, use all 9. Build around the succession framework, let the plants establish, then step back. This is the garden that rewards patience. Plant it once, and watch what it becomes.